Did you want some Swedish fish? You can have some.
Yeah, if I
Nope.
start to get a prosecutorial or lectury. Oh yeah, make sure your phones are as dead as. You said these are spiced.
Yeah, not like super hot, but we'll try them out.
Will they go good with the Swedish fish? AT&T agree. Oh, look at that, they do. Huh.
Hey, Corey.
Live too.
How are you?
I'm okay.
And just remember, nightmares are dreams. Just bad ones. I feel like everyone's waiting for us.
Are we waiting for anyone? This mic's not.
Yep. All right, I'd like to call the Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Dr. Prithridge, Mr. Bracken, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Same with the approval of the minutes for September 12th, 2023. Any additions, changes, corrections, updates? I'll accept a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Dr. Prithridge with the motion.
Second.
Nice. I'm sorry, Ms. Kaufman with the second, Webster. Ms. Kaufman-Webster, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, seeing none, the minutes are approved. At this time, we will entertain comments from the public that are not related to items on the agenda. So if you would like to address the council or the commission for an item that is not on tonight's agenda, you're welcome to come forth. You have 3 minutes. We will do our best to let you finish your thought, but as soon as it is close to thought completion, Mr. Perry will let us. Oh, you and your advance notice. All right. Pete, could you state your name and your address?
Hi, Pete McCarthy, 6073 Contreras Road, Oxford, Ohio. I wanted to comment today that, about 3 months ago, the last time I personally attended a meeting, there was an awful lot of very strong concern about rules that needed to be changed. You weren't happy with how things were going, and I don't need to bring the case up, that's a whole separate issue. Lots of people were talking very strongly about they wanted to be proactive. They did not want to be reactive. They wanted to change the rules, and they didn't want things to happen again. Well, I'm very concerned that last month you had your opportunity to be proactive and you weren't. You took the day off. There's so much to do with the planning and zoning that you guys probably should be meeting twice a month. And I totally respect your opinions that these things need to be changed, but you guys probably spent close to a half hour making those complaints at the meeting I was in attendance of, and when the opportunity came up, have a lovely day.
Thank you for your comments and your previous service on this commission. Have a good night. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission for items that are not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to reports from commissions, boards, committees, and staff. Ms. Webster, we'll start with you.
I have no reports.
Easiest job, easiest report. I have one that way too.
So not only did housing not meet last time, but we are discussing items about that relate to things that the Housing Advisory Commission is talking about. So I'm really excited about tonight.
Quick question, was there anything from the joint session? I know there's been some movement discussion from when we met at LCMB. There was a lot of work to do, I just didn't know if there was an update.
Airbnbs, the standalone
Yeah.
Airbnb issue, I was kind of curious
Who was
where.
going to organize that?
I think it was the HAC was gonna take it on.
Okay.
Okay,
Which you don't chair, so.
cool. I should have probably told them though.
Perfect.
Do it now.
We can update on that too,
Okay, perfect.
whenever the time comes.
Mr.
Yeah.
Bracken?
Yeah, the Environmental Commission had a meeting in which OKI representatives came and talked about lots of funding resources for new plans around addressing climate change, and it was really exciting, and I'm looking forward to hopefully taking part in some of that in the city.
Dr. Berthridge?
The Parking and Transportation Advisory Board met to talk about mainly updates on a variety of things, some of which relate directly to the Planning Commission, some less so, Amtrak. We talked a little bit about members concerned about, the parking in the bike lanes, delivery vehicles parking in the travel lanes, looking at our existing code to see whether there needs to be any update there. But that was just kind of just a general conversation. One of the things is that, among other things in '24, we're looking at doing some update to transportation plans in Oxford. One, a staff-led update of our thoroughfare plan and our bicycle and pedestrian element of that, but also there's an RFP that will be developed to help design some schematic designs for some of our key corridors to make them complete where they maybe are not. So that's the city as a subrecipient of BCRTA got a grant for transportation improvements related to transit. So that's Transportation Advisory Board. We don't really have an update from the Climate Action Steering Committee, although we had our electrification fair in November, which was trying to educate people about the ways that you can be part of the transition to net zero in your house and all of the Inflation Reduction Action benefits that exist. So we had great vendors there to help tell you about geothermal and heat pumps and EVs and all that stuff, and also all the major tax credits that are available to help you do that. So that kind of aligns with some of the comp plan goals related to sustainability.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Arbuckle, anything to report from any commissions or general knowledge related to this commission?
And so David pretty much covered everything from the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board, and so I have nothing more to report.
Perfect. The only thing I would have to report is from Historic and Architectural Preservation, and we are slated to meet tomorrow, but much like this commission, when there is no business ahead of us, we're respectful of the commission members' time, and we don't meet just to say we met. So we have the month off because there was nothing brought to us by parties concerned. Mr. Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to report that I attended a legislative summit of planning legislative liaisons for just about every state in the nation. And the major theme was the nationwide housing crisis. And American Planning Association, National League of Cities are really focused on the Housing Supply Accelerator and trying to assist local communities in a way that helps to mitigate what could become a state preemption across the country if cities are not and counties are not producing housing at the volume that's necessary. So it's really interesting to hear how focused the national initiative is on housing. The question about short-term rentals, Airbnb,
He just caught me off guard. I know we had a meeting about it, but please do say things.
all I was going to say is staff is following up on that. So Zach is going to be working on a kind of tweaking the amendment that David had drafted, something that would be enforceable and defensible to bring it more into alignment of making it an accessory use as the primary focus. So more to come on that. It
Thank
will
you.
be on this agenda at some point in the future.
Awesome, thanks, Zach.
There was not an intermodal coordinating committee meeting this month, so I don't have anything to report there. I do want to point out that we have a vacancy now on Planning Commission. So since we have a full house tonight, anyone that's interested in getting more interested in serving in planning and zoning in a more of a formal capacity, we have a vacancy and application process. Happy to work with folks that are interested in that and train them. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And although the board, I think we looked at people who have some expertise in things related to planning or architecture, it's, if you're commonsensical and respect for the law, and then staff helps you with that, you really, to me, common sense, being commonsensical is the primary standard for that. So yeah, we have a lot of commonsensical people in Oxford who could contribute their perspective on the planning commission.
And Mr. Moore?
Yes, I think Mr. Perry sufficiently covered the future endeavor when it comes to the text amendment for short-term rentals, so that was all I was going to mention, so that's it for me. Thank you.
And as Mr. Perry mentioned, Mr. Smith was on our commission. He's been on the commission, except for term limits, pretty much most of the time that I've been related to the commission, but he was subsequently elected to city council, and therefore, the way our rules and structure are designed, there's intended to be 5 citizen members and 2 council reps. So he sadly resigned this afternoon, but is an incredibly valuable voice to planning and council. So he'll still be involved at council level, but we appreciate his service over the years. All right, I think we've covered all of our bases on reports, commissions, and that business. So moving forward, new business, PC 2023-15 regarding 101 East Chestnut Street, a zoning map amendment for .38 acres from general business to multifamily residential R3. Robert Humphrey is the applicant agent. And one of my favorite things, Mr. Moore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
I apologize.
Do you want me to, I'm gonna make
There
a
you go.
motion, we enter into public hearing on PC 23-15.
I got so excited you were at the podium. So I have a motion to adjourn to public hearing, and I have a second from Vice Chair Rosenberg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we're in public session. Mr. Moore, you technically now have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Planning Commission members. So our first case of the night, this is PC 2023-15. This is a map amendment at 101 East Chestnut Street. This is a property that's presently zoned GB General Business District, and the proposal is to rezone to a multifamily residential R3. The applicant is Bob Humphrey, who is an architect with Trident and Associates, who's here with us this evening. The property owner is Jairam LLC. The site area is a little above 16,000 square feet, around 1/3 of an acre in size. The current use of the property, it was a former laundromat and a storage unit facility. It's now no longer operational, at least the laundromat portion. And the current zoning of the property is GB General Business. The proposal is to rezone to R3. And as the applicant has communicated to us, the applicant is essentially acting as agent for the property owner. They would intend, if the rezoning was successful, to develop the property into a multifamily building. The desired number of units presently is 9. They are probably going to encounter some challenges, regulatory challenges in terms of actually accomplishing that level of density. But nonetheless, they have decided to continue pursuing rezoning the property at this time to R3. Here's a look at the site location. So this is immediately adjacent to the Verge housing complex, which is directly to the east. If you're familiar with the Red Ox drive-through, that's at 95 East Chestnut, which is to the west. And you have single-family residential uses to the north off of Ardmore and East Chestnut. So here's a look at the zoning classifications in the area. So everything that's in red is the GB. The kind of greenish yellow color is R3, so that currently applies to the Verge as well as other properties along Arrowhead Drive. And then to the north is a two-family district, the R2 MS. MS stands for mile square. So this gives you a look at the zoning in the area. And here's a look at what the zoning map would essentially look like if the rezoning was approved by council. Planning Commission, of course, is advisory to council, so you're making a recommendation to City Council. Here's a look at the existing land uses in the area. So the pink color is showing where commercial uses are presently existing. So I think the only other commercial use really to note in this very small node, if you will, along East Chestnut would be SDS Pizza, which is right here. And then to the south of that is the Nelson Morrow building, as well as the Oxford Township building. Nelson Morrow is owned by the school district. And then there's single family, as I noted already, which is to the north of the property, and multifamily is in orange off to the east. And there's a very small park, which is at the corner of East Chestnut and South Main, that is Robert Arts Park. And here's a look at our comprehensive plan that was adopted in January. This is showing general guidance for the land use and character of the area. So everything that's in orange is the urban mile square neighborhood. And there's also a campus designation that applies to the west and to the south. I think that was generally applied to kind of encompass the Chestnut Fields area, which of course is owned by Miami and used more institutionally. So with the urban mile square neighborhood, this is a character type that is described as a primarily residential area of the city and features a variety of housing types ranging from single-family homes all the way up to large-scale fraternity, multifamily uses, but still accommodating some neighborhood-scale commercial uses as secondary uses. So to that end, really, it's kind of up to the property owner in a way whether they want to use their property more commercially or residentially. I think both could be compatible in their own way with the vision that's articulated by the comprehensive plan. Here's an aerial view. So this is giving you kind of more of a bird's eye of the surrounding area, and we can refer back to this as needed. Okay, so zooming into the aerial again, just getting you acquainted with the site. So here are some photos of the laundromat. This is a view along East Chestnut Street looking toward the east, so this would be looking toward Patterson. And then here's a look at the storage units behind the laundromat, as well as a view from the Verge parking lot to the east. Returning to the aerial, and this is a very preliminary site layout that the applicant has provided us as a courtesy at this stage. This is not a mandatory item that we require with the rezoning, but this essentially did begin as what staff would call a preliminary zoning review, where there is a particular vision that has been crafted by an architect working for a property owner seeking a particular housing proposal. So that was kind of put through the filter in terms of the applicable regulations, and that preliminary zoning review in all of its great detail was included in your packet. There were some regulatory challenges with respect to this particular proposal. Again, assuming hypothetically if the R3 zoning classification, the redesignation as R3 were successful, there are some challenges to note, and I'll just show you very quickly. These are the preliminary building elevations. They're showing a 3-story building, so 3 units per floor. So if rezoned to R3, the current plans present the following challenges. With R3, you need a minimum of 120 feet of lot width for a multifamily use. The lot width is 84 feet at present. Building height, the maximum is 35 feet. The height that they're showing currently is 44 feet. The drive aisle, the narrowest it gets is to 18 feet. So both by zoning code as well as per our fire chief's comments on the proposal, that needs to be expanded to at least 20 feet. There's issues with parking setback and turnaround as well. So there's a number of challenges that await. So even if this rezoning were successful, this should by no means be a guarantee that this particular level of density that's being conveyed by these very preliminary plans that have been provided, that this could be accomplished. So going through the decision standards, and I won't read back all of the staff analysis, but kind of the way we see these standards being rated is that A would not be applicable. A is essentially, is there an error on the zoning map? No, we don't believe there's any evidence to that, so that's not applicable. The way that the code gives direction to the commission to make a decision, essentially only one of these standards has to be true for you to find that this is a suitable action to be taken. So only one of these standards need be true in order to recommend approval. We believe that there is support in the comprehensive plan to turn this over from commercial to residential, but as I said previously, keeping the zoning the way it is could also be in support of a number of other goals in the comprehensive plan. With letter C, whether there's been a substantial change in area conditions, that historically has been applied in the sense of, has there been any actual physical or tangible change in the area? No, there really hasn't, at least not any time in recent past, so we don't find much support there. And letter D, is there a legitimate need for additional land area in the zoning district? We don't have any R3 zoning currently in the city that is undeveloped or kind of awaiting a turnover, if you will, to something different or being redeveloped. So in that sense, D could lend support as well. So with that, we would recommend approval of the rezoning. We don't really, as staff, we don't have an objection to this property turning over to residential. But again, with the strong disclaimer that the 9-unit building and the challenges that is being presented at present with the site layout the way it is, that this would in no way be guaranteed by simply rezoning the property. With straight rezoning requests, these are often called straight rezonings, anything that's not a planned development. You can't really attach conditions to it. It's just sort of a yes or no. Do you approve the change to R3 or do you not, in which case it stays GB. Finally, I will note that we did get some comments from the property owner of 95 East Chestnut, which is the Red Ox drive-through. Just had some concerns, mainly having to do with the parking, so not really directly applicable to the rezoning at this point. But in staff's viewpoint, I think this could be a stronger application if perhaps both properties came together and this was more of a joint application to rezone from, say, GB to R3, in which case you've got a lot more site area in that case to apply the various puzzle pieces that you need in order to achieve a development of this type. So with that, that concludes my report. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moore?
I do. So is any kind of housing allowed to be built currently on GB?
No, GB does not
Even
allow any form of residential
So-
use. It is a purely commercial district.
The things that I see around are relics of the past then?
Well, in terms of around the site at hand with the.
Like College Corner Pike or out elsewhere?
Yeah, so for College Corner Pike, for instance, so there's a lot of single-family homes, like ranch-style homes along that stretch, and those are grandfathered uses.
That's, yeah.
So
And
those
some of
can
the
continue
apartments
as
that
long as
are-
they don't go away. If they're replaced with something that's commercial, it's not allowed to revert to residential.
And some of the multifamily there too.
I believe most of the multifamily would have a district that's more supportive of that use.
But
That,
there's some non-conforming.
There's some non-conforming is what I'm saying.
GB, yeah.
So my question is, nothing is allowed to be built on GB currently that is residential?
GB does not allow any new residential usage to be
Okay.
built.
Now, I read in here that you said that the largest thing that could really be built would be a two-family house.
Yes, that's essentially the most intense residential land use that would be virtually, I'll use the word guaranteed in that sense, because I think the property's probably big enough that you could accommodate all of the code requirements, the setbacks, the parking, et cetera. It's got sufficient lot width for a two-family. To do even a
Okay.
three-family, you would need to go to BZA, or the applicant would need to go to BZA for that.
And then does the seemingly successful Red Ox business know that you want them to combine with?
I've had numerous phone calls with the Red Ox.
Oh, okay, cool. I guess
I've
I'll have
informed
to
them
maybe
of
find a new place to
potential
get.
options, but of course,
Okay.
they own the property, so they control the destiny
Yeah.
of what they choose to do with it.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, reading your analysis, you could see that this could kind of go either way. There are justifications in both regards. And is that a function that, well, it could go either way, or does our code just not, I mean, at one level, you could say we should have mixed use on this site, which would accommodate both, and that ideally would be, in this context, would be both. Is there no way within our code currently to get the residential without sacrificing the commercial?
So I'm going to signal to our AV person upstairs, if they wouldn't mind. Excellent. Thank you, Glenn. I'm going to go to the comprehensive plan slide
Okay.
to talk from that. Okay, so Urban Mile Square neighborhood, I think could definitely support another zoning district that is offered by our code, which would be the neighborhood business. But I think what was possibly hindering the applicant from applying for that particular zoning district is that only allows for up to 2 dwelling units above commercial. So I think the desire was to have more density of dwelling units. I think there was some, they were potentially amenable to offering a sort of storefront commercial space on the first floor that would be facing East Chestnut. But again, I think because of the kind of the hard stance that our code takes when it comes to the number of units in a single structure, being no more than 2 on the second floor or above, that was possibly what was hindering that.
And then
from
the
being
follow-on question, that's our current code. We're looking at a code rewrite in the next year or so. If I'm reading the values in our comprehensive plan, the idea that we've been segregating uses, I mean, the GB is a zoning district that dates back to 2003 or something. Is it likely in the future, I mean, if you were to prognosticate in the future, are we likely to have, would our code have less hard boundaries on, for example, mixed use? You know, will we be more friendly to mixed use in the future than we currently are?
Potentially.
Okay.
Potentially so.
Okay.
I just have a question. In the comments, there's mention of the Chestnut Fields focus area.
Yes.
And I just happen to not be familiar with that, so can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And I don't think that my slideshow offers a pretty good picture of that, so I am going to see if I can reach a more interactive map so I can show you exactly what that focus area entails. So, future land use viewer. So this is an interactive view of our comprehensive plan's future land use map. And I will zoom into the property. Internet's a little slower here, so it may take just a second for the colors to actually pop up on the map. While it's doing that, I'll go to that section of the report. Let's see here. Here we go. So, still loading apparently, but the Chestnut Fields focus area, so what is a focus area, right? So they're essentially areas of town where there was identified a greater propensity, if you will, for change in the future. Change in land use, change in development pattern, change in character, more intensity of development, all of those things potentially. And the Chestnut Fields area, I think it more or less is identified in this extent that you see here on the map. So Chestnut, Chestnut Fields, the neighborhoods that are sort of immediately adjacent. So the focus areas would call attention to portions of the city that could absolutely warrant further examination, district level planning, because again, they have that stronger chance of experiencing physical change in the immediate future. So when it comes to the colors on the map, which I showed you earlier, kind of the campus versus the urban mile square distinction, that those could be viewed a little bit more flexibly just because the area is seen in more of a state of flux, potentially more of a state of flux, as compared to, say, Southern Knolls subdivision, which is already developed and already single-family, so degree of possibility for change on, say, Melissa Drive or Dana Drive, very, very low. That's probably going to remain the same that it is for a while into the future. But Chestnut Fields has greater chance for change. in the
And
future.
prioritize for future area planning. So,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes.
Okay.
So all you're saying is that there's no mandate, there's no obligation of any sort that would hinder our consideration of the zoning change, because the Chestnut Fields focus area is just kind of an idea. Is that what you're saying? It's not anything that's,
I think you can take the future land use map and the designations, and again, I really wish that this
Yeah,
would
no, I
generate here
understand.
because it would really help illustrate what I'm trying to convey. You can take the categorization of character areas a little bit more flexibly, like say, I'm trying to think of an example here, but if there was a chunk that was, say, slated for suburban commercial, but it was adjacent to an urban mile square neighborhood, then, and it was within a focus area, that might be justification to say, well, it's kind of more on the boundary, it's where certain land uses or certain densities are sort of blending together, and so we're going to be a little bit more flexible in how we interpret the future land use map as opposed to just accepting it outright in terms of how it recommends the land use be. Does that make sense?
yeah, I guess really the bottom line is there's nothing about this this focus area that hinders our ability to approve or disapprove a zoning change on this lot.
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Zach, I've got this slide on slide 6 of mine that
Oh.
shows the whole future land use map if you wanted to
Yeah, that would
use
be
my slides.
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It shows the boundary of what Chestnut Fields, slide 6.
Here it is. So, this black boundary right here is the focus area. And it's purposefully drawn to be very bulbous in its shape because it's not a rigid line. It's not like drawing property lines or parcel lines. It's meant to be kind of general.
When we close the public session, I have some information /
Okay, that's
illumination
fine.
on
I
that.
just wanted to make sure this didn't impact
Yeah.
today's agenda. Thank you.
So I do have a couple questions for you. Please clarify, in addition to what Vice Chair Rosenberg mentioned about College Corner Pike, we have areas above CBS, for example, so that's planned unit development. But uptown above Chipotle, so could you explain the difference of general business and permissible use of residential above things like the Princess Theater?
Sure. So Princess Theater, above Chipotle, those are a totally different zoning district. It is a mixed-use district by its very nature. That's the UP Uptown zoning district. So there's different methods for controlling residential density in that area, but it's allowing for a lot more residential units, a lot more occupants as a result. So yeah, that's essentially the difference there. Is GB, again, is a purely commercial district, doesn't allow any residential. NB is kind of, it's a mixed-use district, but there's a very, very strong cap on the residential density for that one being no more than 2 units per structure. And then UP has a whole other set of restrictions, 1 person per 400 square feet, 450 square feet. So a whole other set of standards that influence what you can do above commercial in an uptown area.
So another question I have, and the beauty of this is, even though there was additional unsolicited information of the intent of the property, it's not anything that we're considering at this point. It's just kind of bonus material for like a
Correct.
window into the future.
Correct.
One of the things that caught my attention, and I don't expect you to answer for the applicant, but something they said about the need for student housing. I know the city issues permits to rental properties, do we have an idea of the current vacancy rate of rentals in the city? And then I have one more question.
We would be able to tell you how many units are registered that have an active rental permit, but we don't track vacancy of
Okay.
units.
Is it fair to say if I were a landlord and I didn't rent it out, does it make sense to not get a permit, or is a permit a linear, you get it every year?
Yeah,
It's not
It
come
would
and
make
go.
sense to keep it current, to keep
Okay.
it active.
And then the last question I have is you had talked about availability of R3. Isn't there R3 zoning out by level 27 in the annex?
It's R4.
It's R4, which
And
is
so,
even better than R3.
and as the staff report points out too, if you're looking at it just from a purely multifamily lens, multifamily non-mile square districts, which would be on your more peripheral areas of town, that's really the only undeveloped site at present that's zoned for by right multifamily usage for new development. Everything else that's zoned R3 or R4 is already developed.
And one other question I just thought of. So there's competing arguments whether we need, or like if there's a need for R3. Do we have a gauge on our need, appetite, or capacity for general business in the town? Like, are we bursting at the seams, needing, I'm just thinking back to previous things that have come in front of this commission, like the Whistle Stop property and the, potential, when there was talk of turning that into R3, there was quite a hullabaloo about the loss of general business. I just wondered what our current inventory and capacity for general business is.
I mean, short of just tallying up the acreage of general business, trying to get a sense for, having your finger on the pulse of what sort of commercial demand is there. That's a very tough thing, I think, to try to get data on or have a good grasp on.
Anecdotally,
Short of
do
just
we-
doing a windshield survey or just sort of anecdotally, hearing stories from folks, that
But
type of thing.
anecdotally, we don't have a lot of undeveloped general business parcels or vacant parcels.
Not
to
many
our
at
knowledge.
all.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Moore? All right, seeing none, we will invite the applicant up to give any additional presentation perspective that they have, and then any questions the commission has. Mr. Humphrey?
Robert Humphrey with Robert Treaton and Associates. I guess all I could say now, just reiterate the things that have already been said, was if we get this approved, we're fully aware of the restrictions we face and mainly reducing the density and among the other issues that came up. So what we would do if it was approved is, first thing we would do is go back to the drawing board and start addressing these issues and, like I said, basically reducing the density of it, and that's really all I have to add.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Humphrey from the commission? All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, at this time, if there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this item, 101 East Chestnut Street, feel free to come forward and state your name, your address. And at that point, I think a couple of us have 3-minute clocks ready to go. All right, well, oh, okay.
My name is Kavita Mula, and I'm the owner of the 95 East Chestnut Street, Red Ox Drive-through property and the business. I don't have a problem with the zoning and building the student housing there, but I have little concern about the parking over there. We already sent a letter to you, to the panel, and the problem is the parking, the driveway which is taken to the parking lot to the back of the, for the housing is just beside the load bearing wall on of the East Chestnut Street, which is having a immovable inventory and the coolers in the side. And if something happens, God forbid, like in future, something happens while backing up the cars or moving trucks or vehicles, there is a threat of hitting the wall or accidentally, like something inadmissible, and like it's unrepairable problems because that's the load bearing wall for the whole building, and it comes down. Our business is like in problem for repairing it, for stopping the business from in the business for a long time, like maybe months or weeks. According to that situation, I request to change a little bit of that parking to the other side so that it will be helpful to both of us.
Thank you. All right, any other, if you have anything to say on this matter, please come up and we will give you 3 minutes. Go ahead and state your name and your address, please.
Yeah, my name is Sahith Bukanti. I'm the owner of 101 East Chestnut, the property. So the concern that she just mentioned about like a big pickup truck possibly hitting their wall, causing any damage, we will put poles there, and I think that should, remedy the issue. Also, I think, the issue of a big pickup truck or a U-Haul hitting the wall, I think that's very unlikely, and it's never happened. My father used to own Red Ox for many, many years beforehand, since 2017, and he's never really had an issue of a U-Haul or a big truck hitting the wall or causing any damage to the wall that they're mentioning. And I don't see an issue there. And then the other aspect is if we put the driveway lane on the other side, as I mentioned, it would be closer to the railway tracks. And I think that would be, causing issues for the students and harder for parking and as well. So I just want to, mention that as well, and make sure everyone's aware of that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
One more comment.
Unfortunately, we're only, this is comments to the commission, so there's no opportunity for a second chance or a rebuttal. I do apologize for that. Any other comments? All right. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn from public session.
So moved.
Dr. Berthridge with the motion,
Second?
Mr. Bracken with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none. I do want to offer a point of clarification. I try to go last, but one thing I do want to reiterate, and this is mostly for the folks in attendance and those playing at home. The only thing that we are looking at right now is whether or not to rezone from general business to R3. If we rezone it, and the IRS comes in and reclaims everyone's property there, it has nothing to do with anyone's desires, intents. Somebody wins the lottery, disappears, and gives the city the property. It goes to the rule of the property, not anyone's plans. So like I said earlier, we appreciate the window into the future, but it's completely irrelevant to this topic. So the decision we make has absolutely no bearing or concern on anyone's desired use, because again, we could approve something and it could be sold 7 minutes after the decision, and we haven't voted on the use of the property outside of established zoning code. So I just really want to reiterate that. And with that, which side of the table wants to start? Oh, well, you know you want to.
Well, I'll start by framing the conversation, which is when it comes to rezoning, it's really guided by what the general welfare would say. So, and that's why I really appreciated Mr. Moore's kind of in-depth analysis of a comprehensive plan, because this is the best articulation of what the general welfare is. So there's no obligation, like a conditional use, you kind of should approve it unless, if it's a rezoning, it's really like, does it conform with the vision of the general welfare or not, and those are the kind of decision standards. So just that, put that in, yeah, and it's not about the design. And I guess I would say I'd appreciate Mr. Moore's analysis, because the comprehensive plans, like our vision in Oxford, they communicate what seem like conflicting signals, like we want more high-density housing, we want more infill, but we also want more commercial, we want walkability. So, if you read Mr. Moore's analysis, he was going back and forth, and ultimately you came down on a recommendation, but it seems like I guess I would say that the thing that it's unfortunate is because I think what our comprehensive plan is asking for is mixed-use nodes, walkable mixed-use nodes that can support all the things that we're talking about, the commercial, the residential, that's in walking distance. I think that's what our comprehensive plan is intimating. It's just the fact that our code currently continues to segregate land uses. So it's either residential or it's commercial, with the exception of a very small number of districts. One is residential, one is the neighborhood commercial. I would also say that our UP district, we geographically anchor it to Uptown, but it's a zoning district that also meets, what we're saying. So I guess what I'm saying is that then it's about what the vision is of this part of town. And to Commissioner Webster's question, the reason why I think it's selected there is because we know this is a part of town that currently is like bus garages and, but in the future is going to be a multimodal station. There's going to be a lot of change in that part of town, and it may become a gateway to our community. An Amtrak station, a multimodal station. There's a lot of potential in that part of town. So when I think about the way things are today, residential versus a laundromat, it could be but I'm also trying not to foreclose on future opportunities, because if this really develops as a mixed-use corridor, have we traded some potential for some commercial for residential? I'm worried about the future. And that to me is a little bit my hesitance in rezoning this, because ideally I'd like this to be a mixed-use place where you had the commercial on the first floor and residential on the second, third floors. And I'm sorry that our zoning code doesn't really enable that right now. I think it might in a year or 18 months. So I guess it's a question of whether we rezone this now and then it becomes residential for all of perpetuity, or whether we say, sorry, it's just not the right time, but maybe our code will come around and make this more feasible in a few years. So
I'd like to file a complaint. You beat me to perpetuity.
I just want to, I actually live right in that area on Arrowhead Drive. And so for me, it's about this very specific property, which it always should be about the very specific property and what's going on around it. And it's got, Zach's right. If Mr. Moore is right, if you put Red Ox with this property, sure, that might make sense as far as our rezoning to give some more residential. But right now, there is this property locked by Red Ox and the Verge and a railroad track. And it's tiny and it's narrow, and if it can truly only fit what's basically a duplex because of the way the R3 is gonna work in that particular little spot, that is just to me like a useless action. Not only are we saying this is gonna be marketed to students in the future is what is being said, but we're talking about two places. So I think that neighborhood business is the best zoning district that has, I don't understand why more places in this town have not tried to be neighborhood business, because with the bus station coming, multimodal, this is gonna be such a great location for both a business and sure, maybe there's some cute little student housing on top of it. That's, maybe that's 2 units somewhere else in town for, more affordable housing. So my opinion is that there's no reason to rezone this property at all from you know, I want to see it be neighborhood business. I want to see our code work better with that.
I think it makes sense. I don't mind mixed, but leaving it as it is, I don't know if is the best use. For the general area, not being specific to what they want to do, but it means a lot to be able to have access to transportation to other cities. If it happens to be students, which makes a lot of sense since we have so many students coming in from places like Chicago and other areas, it seems like it would be effective for the area. But I do like the idea of having the diversity potential there. There's no reason to cut that off. But otherwise, I think I'm generally, it makes sense to me.
I'll say I agree. I think it makes sense now and in the future to have the option for commercial there. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people that live in that area that can benefit from walking to whatever is there. So, yeah, I support not changing the code just yet. Maybe wait till the future, the zoning code rewrite to see if there's something that's better, that's more descriptive of what our vision is.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I was on the fence a little bit when I started thinking about this site because all of the neighbors to the site to the east and across the street are zone residential. So, you know, there's some argument that it's a residential district. But now that we've all looked at a proposal, we're not voting on this proposal, of course, but when we see that the size of the parcel really does not lend itself well to the kind of housing that we want and we need in this town, it seems much more sensible, also in consideration of the multimodal development, maybe this, you know, campus, this Chestnut Fields focus group. I think it's just best to keep it this small parcel zoned as commercial because it's not a good residential site. You know, you could do it, but I just feel doesn't have a great benefit to our community.
I like the fact that there might be a significant density increase there and the use of it. My only consideration is having multiple options versus residential. But that's me.
Well, and to your point about the focus area, I see no reason it gets derailed, but I believe within the next week, the Miami Board of Trustees is voting on the proposal or the lease for Butler County Regional Transit Authority. And, you guys know I'm a trustee and we just approved a north of $26 million multimodal facility. So any development in that area is not going residential. It is probably going more to ideally the mixed use or probably something that is more relevant to Amtrak, the multimodal. Just to give you an idea, and I really do appreciate the applicant and their perspective. But a lot of, and to Vice Chair Rosenberg's point, they had put about the substantial change in the area. All of that was there. The rail tracks will predate any of that. Those buildings all are quite old, and the facility next to it, the Verge, for those of us who have lived in town, it's just the rebuilt version of what was there before. There was always a 3-story apartment. So this area hasn't changed that would necessitate a zoning change at this point. I do think if and when we have more choices and flexible options, something to the effect of, and I only say this because people know the building, but something along the lines of the new Caroline Harrison building across from Community Arts Center, where there's 1 level of retail and 2 of residential, something along those lines is probably more appropriate for where that zone is gonna go.
And just one last little point is you had talked, there was the question about is there enough GP across town? And there's plenty of GP on one side of town, but there's almost no commercial on the south side of town. So if we, and if you look at the map, it looks like there's a lot, but our landfill is zone GB, our city garage. So functionally, the economically developable commercial sites on Chestnut Street are very few, and this is one of them. So to me, again, it's like there's a certain scarcity. If we actually do imagine this as a neighborhood mixed-use node, yeah, I would hate to say to the applicant that, oh, sorry, you can't do this now on some promise in the future. But I believe that if our code, as it comes out of a rewrite, reflects the values of the comprehensive plan, it should offer more flexibility for doing the kind of density and mixture of uses that, we can't make promises, right? But I think if you look at our comprehensive plan, it wants walkable, mixed-use centers. We're talking about a neighborhood, a scale plan there. I think it's not gonna be years before the zoning code is more supportive of a more intensive use than could be done today. So one may lose out on a duplex in 2024, but may have opportunity for something more intensive in 2026. That's just I can't promise.
Well, and
But,
again, no
you know.
promises, but one of the things that we have talked about at least a half dozen times is our current requirement for on-site parking.
Yeah.
So again, that may, a lot of the conversation has been about parking in driveways.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would be more comfortable with, if I had to gamble, I'd be more comfortable gambling with UP zoning here. Maybe it's too tall, but it aligns better
Maybe
with
we
the
need a
vision.
downtown zone.
Yeah, maybe we just, it's like something that can maximize the site that doesn't have the off-street parking, that gets the height that they want. I mean, our UP zone could do what they want to do on that lot right today, whether or not, we'd have to think through whether that's the kind of thing we want to do, but our code could be better at achieving our goals, and I hope in a few years it is.
All right, seeing a fair consensus here, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Perry, yeah.
I just have one piece of advice that whoever's going to make the motion, if it's in the affirmative and you're looking to deny, then you would, of course, still make it in the
We're doing the
affirmative.
double negatives again.
It's more fun that way, but the other thing would be that whoever's making the motion, I would recommend that you would state, since it's possibly different than the staff's findings, what those are. If there's not any supported, if none of the 4 decision standards are supported, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Gotta fight it.
do you want a motion to approve or deny? Which one do you want, Mr. Chair?
Whatever you make, I will provide instructions.
Mr. Perry, which would you prefer that we do?
I'd say approved.
Okay.
So a motion, if there is a motion to approve, a yay vote is approve, a nay vote is status quo, keep it as it is.
So how does that work, though, if one wants to articulate the reasons for denial? Because it'd be hard to move
All
them.
you have to say is, you're going to make a motion, but before you do that, you would explain that the consensus is that none of the 4 decision standards are supported, and then make your motion. It doesn't have to be in the motion.
Okay.
We just want to have it on record.
Okay, yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna second.
Okay. For sake of the vote, I'm going to make a motion for approval of, what's our agenda item here? PC 2315. And you said you were going to second?
I do second that.
So,
But in making that motion, I'm going to vote against it because I believe that none of the decision standards are met. With respectful disagreement, Mr. Moore articulated different comprehensive plan arguments for approval versus denial. And I think he's articulated in the findings sufficient justification for not finding for approval. Does that make sense? It's in double negative.
okay, so the motion is to approve the rezoning from general business to R3, second by Vice Chair Rosenberg. So if you vote yay, you are voting to change from general business to R3 and agreeing with Mr. Moore's assessment that in some way, shape, or form, at least one of the 4 have been met. If you vote nay, you're voting for status quo, keep it general business, and saying that Mr. Moore may have valid points, but not to the level that necessitate or justify switching from general business to R3.
And I would just say there's ample comprehensive plan justification for a denial as well. I think there was justification both ways, but on the use of, yeah.
So a yay is change, a nay is status quo, stays general business. Clear as mud? All right, Mr. Perry, you want to
I'll
call that
call the
roll?
roll. All right. I'll start over here with Mr. Arbuckle,
Nay.
Dr. Prithridge,
No.
Mr. Bracken,
Yay.
Ms. Webster,
No.
Ms. Rosenberg,
No.
and Mr. Watt.
No. All right, so the motion does not pass. 5-1. Yeah, so the votes are 1-5 technically, so it was 1 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Wow, I need an abacus. Okay, so with that, staff, just for those in the crowd and watching at home, staff as a common business practice will work with the applicant for any questions or clarifications and potential future steps or guidance, so.
And this is just a recommendation to council, so there will be, council will have to vote on this recommendation as well. Right? Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Quick clarification, if we vote to not approve something, isn't that technically deciding not to send a recommendation to council?
There will still be an ordinance drafted for council to act on.
So whether we go affirmative
Because
or negative?
the decision is not yet made, because council still has to act.
Okay, so whether it's affirmative or
Correct.
negative, okay, I just wanted to
An
make sure.
a first reading ordinance will still be sent to council for action.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure they were treated the same.
Yep.
All right, next business item, PC 2023-16, 601, 603, 607 West Chestnut. This is a zoning map amendment for 3.33 acres from single-family low-density residential, AKA R1A, to single and two-family residential, R2A district. The city of Oxford is the applicant. Mr. Perry?
Do you want to enter into public hearing
hold on a
first,
second.
or wait?
No, I do have a clarification. Mr. Perry, are you speaking on behalf of staff and the city as an applicant, or will there be somebody else who will come up as an applicant?
I'll be doing both.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So, Chair, before you go on, I need to recuse myself because I have a personal interest potentially in this limited neighborhood.
That
So,
is all you have to say, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just think, 2 more people go home, we can't vote. I'm kidding.
So do you want to, I can't remember when we enter into public hearing now.
Yeah, we would now.
I move we enter into public hearing on PC 2023-16.
All right, we have a motion and a second with Mr. Bracken. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, we are in public hearing. Mr. Perry, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Excited to be with you here tonight. This is something that staff has been working on for many, many months to bring this before you. We have a zoning map amendment on behalf of the city for 3 parcels of land, 601, 603, and 607 West Chestnut Street. So the details of it there, it's 3 1/3 acre on Chestnut Street, and I'll have a map here for you as well. The request is to change the zoning, or a zoning map amendment, or rezone. All means the same thing, from R1A to R2A, so from single-family residential to single and two-family residential. So there's a map of the area showing the 3 parcels that are highlighted. From right to left would be 601, 603, and 607 West Chestnut. You can see they're really, really deep parcels there. It's actually an unplatted part of the city. So as we just discussed in the previous case, the decision standards, and we'll recap these again at the end of my slides, and the requirement for a rezoning to be supported by code is that there be at least one of the decision standards would be supported in order for this to be recommended. So the first one being an error on the zoning map. This is kind of a relic of older map making, but there sometimes can be surveying errors. So That's one we'll touch on. The next one being comprehensive plan. You spent a lot of time on that in your first case. The future land use map would be one of the elements to consider in the comprehensive plan, but as you know, it's a thick document. There's many other aspects of the comprehensive plan as well, the goals. C being substantial change in area conditions that necessitates the amendment. And the way that we typically apply this is by adding the phrase to that, since the adoption of the comprehensive plan. So since we have a new comprehensive plan, our anticipation is that that comprehensive plan would have looked at the conditions of this area in making the comprehensive plan. And the last one, legitimate need for additional land area in the zoning district that will be expanded. So we'll look at that a little bit as far as the supply and availability. Of course, there's a lot of factors with availability, development ability, whether it's in the city, not in the city. So just a quick overview of the citywide zoning map. This is a screenshot from the city's GIS. We have some really nice GIS software out there now where you can look at land use and zoning, addresses and properties. And so the area that we're talking about on West Chestnut Street, I'll put my cursor on it there. So you can see the current zoning is R1A, which there's quite a bit of throughout the city already. There's a little bit of R2A in the area, just actually across the creek to the south, and then some in the southeast side of town, and a little bit up on Kelly Drive. And then the future land use map, which is an element of the comprehensive plan that was just adopted this year. This was not something that was in the 2008 comprehensive plan, so we're excited to have that as an element of the comprehensive plan to give more distinct guidance for what the future vision of the city is. And as you can see, there's a difference between land use and zoning. As you've discussed previously, the two have different purposes. Land use is a broader guideline or a vision for what we think will happen within the next decade, what we expect, what we hope will happen, what we want to anticipate and prepare for. And the zoning is the regulatory aspect of how that is developed as far as the property rights go. So the city has had a history, the community has had a history in regard to housing, which is what is motivating this rezoning request from the city. So although this is a long list of recent history of housing advocacy, I'll call it, there's actually a lot more to this. The community as well, local faith-based organizations, family resource centers, so I won't get into those. But just kind of going through a list here, Habitat for Humanity has had a footprint here for a long time. So those are some community efforts that have been made going back into the 1990s. The Housing Advisory Commission was established in 2005 to help inspire and motivate and help with regulatory actions and visioning for improving access to housing. In 2006, the League of Women Voters did their own survey and study to help to advance housing. In 2008, the Community Foundation actually acquired a house with the intention of providing it to kind of set the pace for what would be a moderate income based purchase. The 2008 Comprehensive Plan also had a lot of housing goals in it as well. Habitat for Humanity did another project, a much larger project, which is about to be completed right now on Hester Road, Carter Court, Fuller Way. Some of you may know about the Oxford Village Network, which was sponsored by Oxford Seniors, which has continued to grow as well. That was a broader effort, multi-age effort. The city's property on Oxford Rowley Road, a plan was done called a design charrette that was done to envision what that might look like. And you may remember there was an effort to recruit a housing developer. It ended up not working out because of the funding source didn't come through for fiscal retirement. Then the city did its own housing study shortly after that, around that same time. And then City Council began to formalize a housing goal of housing for all, and that started to become more of the city's operations and strategic planning in 2021. So you can see things are starting toward the end of this list here, started to become more into the city's realm. And then the cottage community, which is in design now on Hester Road, and then Western Knolls again, and then we come to where we are now with the city's acquisition of parcels around town. So the city's been acquiring land. And then the neighborhood housing services, and then they have the comprehensive plan. So just a little bit of the background of the efforts in the community and the city for housing. So back to the city's property here on West Chestnut Street, looking at the location, and then the current zoning is R1A. As you can see, there's R2A to the south, and R3 to the west, R1B across to the north. So the proposal is to extend the R2A to the south up to West Chestnut Street and continue that. The R2A zoning, there is a little bit of a summary at the beginning of the report that explains the potential dwelling units that could result from an increase in zoning. And this could happen either through typical building permit processes for individual parcels, or it could happen through what's called a plan development process, where the overall number of dwelling units are calculated based on the overall acreage. So the current zoning of R1A would, of course, allow the 3 homes that are there now on the property, or up to 10 dwelling units based on the overall acreage, but only through a plan development process, which is a separate process through public hearing. The R1B zoning could allow 3 individual single-family homes, or again, a plan development up to 19 dwelling units, only through the plan development process. The R2A could allow up to 3 duplexes without a plan development, or up to 38 dwelling units. We did also look at the potential for R3, which is what the zoning is to the west. I did have someone suggest that to me, and we decided to propose R2A, considering that the development density to the west is actually built as an R2A density right now, so kind of continuing that pattern. And so that's what it would look like if the zoning map were to be amended to R2A. So the land use map, as we talked about, which is this is a different way of looking at the data, different way of analyzing the context of the area. So you can see the building footprints, the townhomes.
Quick
and-
point.
Yes.
For folks in the audience, if you have a private conversation, please take it outside. It's a little tough to hear with the mics pick up more than you think.
Yeah, I'm hearing some conversations too, so
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear you're experiencing the same thing. So to the west, we have the Charleston Drive development. So there's a couple different scales of footprints there. There's the more traditional multifamily to the farther west, and then the townhomes of different sizes directly to the west of the subject property. So this is just a little bit of an overview map, and you can see that the subject parcels are very low density because of the depth of the parcels back to the creek. The future land use map, so difference in between existing land use, future land use. So this would be an excerpt from the comp plan future land use map. I showed the overall city view earlier. The future land use map shows suburban neighborhood for the area, which is actually what is to the south as well. And duplexes and single family are permitted with R2A zoning as well, as additional dwelling unit density. Transitional suburban neighborhood to the west, so the area where the townhomes are is a different future land use designation, and then higher density urban neighborhood to the west of that. So that's just a zoomed in view of the future land use map. As I mentioned, there are other aspects to the comprehensive plan as far as the decision standards go besides just the future land use map. So here's an aerial view showing the 3 parcels with the 3 homes. This is looking south across Chestnut Street. And then a view looking east along the street. You can kind of get an idea of the kind of the context of the area as far as the spacing between the buildings. We have on the north side of Chestnut Street a little bit more of a traditional spacing between the houses, and on the south side a little bit more spaced out. And then looking west, same area, just different perspective. On the right or the north is on the north side of Chestnut Street, and then on the left would be the south side or the subject property. We've had quite a few questions from those in the neighborhood, those inquiring about where this is in the process. You know, has the city had plans about this for a long time? There's also a parallel process that has gone on where the city has requested proposals for development of this very property. So that has created some questions and some confusion about what is actually being reviewed and decided upon tonight. Is it the development? Is it the developer? Or is it something else? And can we comment on both things? And so, as you know, I just want to make it clear that the development is not being reviewed and approved tonight or recommended. It's the zoning request for a potential development in the future, and that would be up to City Council to decide on who to partner with. So I just put a real quick overview of the steps. Of course, the acquisition has happened for 2 of the parcels. There's a third one that is still in process. So we're at the zoning designation stage right now. And then a site plan review or a hearing. And the reason I put or hearing on there is because if a plan development is done, then that would automatically generate another public hearing in the future at some point. If it's individual homes to be built on the 3 parcels as they currently stand without a plan development, that would not go back for a public hearing. That would be done at the staff level or administratively. And then, of course, after the plans are approved, then there would be the building permit process, which would be all administrative. Back to the decision standards, as I highlighted earlier, and in the staff report, you might have seen that staff did highlight decision standard D being a legitimate need for additional land area in the zoning district that will be expanded. We believe that it's very clear that there's an additional land area. The only R2A that is undeveloped right now is on the far southern extremity of the city along 27 South, South Point Parkway, Lake Forest Drive. There is vacant R2A land there, although plans have been approved and we expect development to happen there, so that would be unavailable. The only other R2A zone land that is in the city is already developed, and that is to the south of this area and then on Kelly Drive. So as far as that specific zoning district goes, there wouldn't be any additional left. So I think it would be very clear about additional land area needed. B, I think could go either way because the future land use map, while it would allow duplexes to be built, because that is an allowed use in a suburban neighborhood supported by the future land use, but there could be additional types of building development that could happen as well. And so depending on the type of development that City Council decides on, the future land use map on its own may not support that. However, there could be other goals in the comprehensive plan, such as the overall housing goals that the city has had, as I've articulated for the past several years, are very well supported in the comprehensive plan as well. However, only one of these is necessary in order for a recommendation for council to approve the request. And with that, because of decision standard D, we do recommend approval of the rezoning request. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Perry? You know I do. So, if you could put the decision standards back up, I just have a couple questions. So, D, it says there's a legitimate need for additional land in the area or in the zoning district that will be expanded. Could you clarify on that? Because when I read through that, I mean, the beauty of English, I can read it 2 very different ways. Is there is a legitimate need for additional land in this area or in that zoning district? So is it that we need it on Chestnut at McGuffey, or is it that we need R2 in general?
It's in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another question, and again, I know we're voting on the rezoning, but I'm curious why, I didn't have the opportunity to participate in the design charrette, but I'm curious why the city bought land when we already owned a ton of land at Western Knolls. And if we're rezoning this, why couldn't we rezone that?
It's a good question.
Okay.
I don't think I could answer that right now without giving you a much longer history of what the process went through with Western Knolls as far as the housing funding that was being applied for.
With Episcopal retirement system.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. Part of that equation had to do with availability of infrastructure. It's a very large piece of property, and there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be developed in order to access that land, whereas this property is already fronting on a public street and has all the utilities available.
If I don't remember if it was the engineer, do these three parcels have, I think it said they needed to remove septic and things of that nature. So there's mitigation that has to occur on these.
There is, it's more of an awareness. The city engineer did ask me about that, is this even pertinent to the zoning discussion? We recommended they go ahead and put it in there just as
Okay.
public record. And if I could, on Western Knolls, one of the other reasons that this property was of interest to the city is because of proximity to transit and community services, whereas Western Knolls fell outside of the radius from public transit and community services that compared to this property.
Okay. Just for the fun of it, I Googled, it's only 0.3 miles from parcel to parcel. And then, of course, I have to have a little bit of fun. Did you pay the $375 application fee to the city from the city?
We did not.
That's a discussion for a whole
It is, it is.
We're only talking about the rezoning here, but
Yes.
that 0.3 miles makes the difference in terms of grant funding that offers different possibilities for this land than Western Knolls.
Well, being the one trustee who rode the RTA, it's not that much different from access to transit.
No, I mean, how it scores though
Okay.
for potential grant opportunities which relate to
Okay.
the possibilities at this site.
All right.
Can I ask,
That's
just
significantly different.
one question, and you alluded to this, but if we could be a little more specific, you note that it's not supported by the comprehensive plan future land use map. However, there are ample other goals, Mr. Kropenbaker articulated some, he's listed one. I guess for the sake of the record, where should we be looking in the comprehensive plans for other justifications? Because, again, the map says one thing, but our goals are pretty strong on housing. So, we've got H2A1, it's, activate, affordable housing, I guess if you could be more specific in the record, where in the comprehensive plan should we look if we wanted, if there's a question mark on criteria number 2, what are some of the pro justifications in the comprehensive plan? Because there certainly are, but for the sake of record, what should we lean on?
Yeah, H2, H2A4 and H2 ensure housing affordability and attainability for all income levels. I think all of which is on page 82 of
Okay.
the comprehensive plan. All of the sub objectives underneath of that goal would be in support of the additional land area.
Okay, thank you.
So I have one other question, and I apologize because you said you're wearing 2 hats, so this will be a longer combo. So you said there's parallel processes, which I understand, we deal with those a lot. But at minimum, it caused confusion because the city passed a resolution instructing city staff to explore RFP funding. And can you help me understand? I'm trying to figure this out sequencing, because when I read that, it seems like somebody calling wedding venues on the way home from the first date. Like, hey, everything went great. A little cart in front of the horse here. So I'm trying to figure that out, because as much as, and maybe this is pontificating, but I'd love your clarification. The last case, we literally just said thanks for the extra information. It has absolutely no bearing. So as much as, I mean, and also, this is something for our law director and I to go have a coffee about. It's interesting that the body asking for permission is ultimately the body who gets to make the decision. I'm trying to figure the sequencing out here because we're strictly looking at a capacity issue on this parcel, but that's why I asked for the clarification. Is it we need the R2? Is it we need R2 here? Because again, I understand what Mr. Bracken's saying, but if we're not considering the use of it, that's where I'm struggling, because when you put it all together, makes sense, because we're talking about housing and this and plus this and grants and all that. But I mean, if we're gonna be fair and objective like we are with everybody else, we have to wash that out of our mind and say, the city goes bankrupt like the city of Detroit and has to sell their property, and now student housing XYZ can build this density. We have to look at the totality of it. So that's where I guess I'm confused as to what is it about these three parcels that, all known or desired use aside, where's the delineation from other parcels? That's where I'm really confused. Because I mean, you guys, I've been on the commission 6-7 years, and I'm always part the waters. They're not connected. So that's where I'm really struggling, because I think there's so many people focused on what's gonna be done, and that's not what we're talking about.
Sure. I haven't been as involved in the recruitment of the funding. I've been somewhat involved, but I know from having worked with city manager staff on other potential projects is that the cost of developing a housing is so high that if there's going to be any availability to provide that for moderate income levels at all, then it's going to take outside funding. And the majority of those outside funding sources require enough land in order to do sizable density. And those are on schedules that have annual calendars. And so they have deadlines. And so our goal was and we should have learned our lesson on Mary Day Park, but we didn't, is to how fast can we get a decision in front of decision makers to see if this could potentially work, so that a potential developer, if a developer partnership could be developed, is could they then apply for that outside funding so the project could actually happen and not sit empty for a long period of time. So that was part of why that happened the way it did. So that's the timing answer. The location answer has to do with availability. Oxford is a very compact city. There's not that much vacant land, and so if there's a way to assemble multiple parcels to do to provide some housing that's interspersed throughout the city and not necessarily on the periphery of the city, that's one of council's, at least some council members' goals have been to integrate housing within neighborhoods. And we're seeing this nationwide too. In the planning field is states are starting to even come to the point of, as I mentioned in my comments at the beginning of the meeting, of mandating that communities provide housing, or they're going to provide it. And so I think Oxford is well suited to do increase housing density and housing access in a sensible way. And I think every neighborhood is going to have to do that at some point over the next few decades. But no neighborhood seems to want to be the first one. And so I think that this was just a matter of availability for the city, and we took the opportunity. So we don't know if it will work or at what density it will be, but we hope that it can be something that City Council will be proud of and the neighborhood will be proud of.
But if I could ask just a philosophical question, the city just happens to be an applicant, just like the last applicant asked. I mean, the city can ask, but philosophically, we should judge this as though we're any applicant, right? I mean,
Who paid their $375?
yeah. So this is, the city happens to be the applicant, but that's less relevant than it is the abstract, does the comprehensive plan support an application to rezone the land, you know? And so I guess that's just philosophically, we should judge all these things the same, and the applicant is not that germane to the
One looks
conversation.
at the definition of person under the Ohio Revised Code, and it's there repeatedly, not always exactly the same, but municipalities and corporations fit the definition of person.
Thank you, Mitt Romney.
So, well, I mean, the last applicant was an LLC.
Yeah.
So the city as a municipal corporation has standing to engage in certain forms of development. And so,
No, but I think, Dr. Prithridge, to your philosophical point is, even though I mean, you know, a lot of times in our town, because we're here basically because of Miami, I think, you know, the university gets an undue burden because everyone's like, oh, Miami. But again, in this light, it'd be no different if it was Paducah LLC.
Yeah, and we have to judge it that way.
Yeah.
Because it could be, you know, I mean, it's, the city happens to be the property owner, but that's not, you know, it's about the merits of the application
of it
and the
so far.
comprehensive plan, yeah.
Okay. And I apologize, you had the dual hat, so of course you're gonna get all my ridiculous questions.
Not ridiculous at all, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Perry? All right, at this time, I will relieve you of the podium. You can go sit in the quasi-comfortable chair. We will go to comments from the public. Just a friendly reminder, for those of you who do want to speak, please come to the podium, state your name and your address. My colleague will have a timer for 3 minutes. Again, we'll try our best to give you a 1-minute warning. And at 3 minutes, we'll try to politely cut you off. So if you could state your name and address, we'd greatly appreciate it.
My name is Kathy Titus, and I live at 101 Charleston Drive. I'm here as a representative for our community of 52 homes within 200 feet of West Chestnut Street properties to present a petition opposing the amendment of the zoning map for 3.3 acres located at 601, 603, 607 West Chestnut Street from single-family, low-density residential R1A district to single and two-family residential R2A. Currently, our neighborhood consists of single-family homes and a mixture of patio/townhomes that comprise 4 different HOAs. Most of our homes are owner-occupied. The major demographic of our neighborhood is comprised mainly of senior citizens and adult single women. This opposition petition contains, and these numbers are different from what you received in your packet because it's updated, the signatures from 48 property owners representing 38 separate households that are within 200 feet of West Chestnut Street property. All 52 property owners were contacted either in person or by mail, and we were unable to obtain responses from 12 households. This calculates to show that 95% of the respondent households are in opposition to the rezoning of 3 West Chestnut Street properties from R1A to R2A. We have many concerns there are many concerns that were voiced by our neighborhood about moving from R1A to R2A, which would allow 38 homes to replace the 3 neighborhood homes. I'm not going to go over those concerns at this point. Though our concerns vary, we, the signers of the petition opposing the rezoning of 601, 603, and 607 Chestnut Street, are unified in our belief that the zoning amendment proposal to change the current zoning from R1A 3 single-family homes, that the city did not purchase 3 properties. They purchased 3 single-family homes that people lived in, to a much higher density R2A, allowing 38 housing units on only 3.3 acres in the center of our community will negatively affect the character and the stability of our community. On a side note, according to the Butler County Auditor's Office, as of this date, the city of Oxford is not the owner of 601 West Chestnut. Though according to Jessica Green, that transfer is pending. They're still in, that has not been closed on. So also, another side note, Mr. Arbuckle recused himself for conflict of interest because he signed the petition of opposition because he lives in our neighborhood. I would also ask at this point that due to predetermination of the matter, there are two other conflict of interest with Mr. Prethridge and Mr. Bracken.
You're at time.
Okay.
Actu-
Well, I'll just ask for that.
And I say, I'll give my 3 minutes and I leave it to her to continue?
You can't leave it to her, but you can read what she has in notes. That's permissible.
My notes, this is just something I don't have that scripted. I'm
Don't they
sorry.
do that in Congress where you're allowed to give 3 minutes to the other?
Unfortunately, there's no yielding.
Well, as speaking for a spokesperson, I spoke with Mr. Moore, and he said usually there's leeway for someone who's speaking as the spokesperson. So,
Unfortunately, our meeting policies don't allow.
okay,
for
so Mr.
conglomerate.
Moore needs to,
Well, we asked you if you were going to be a spokesperson, and you didn't tell us that
but
until
I
tonight.
am the spokesperson for this petition.
So do you want to do a hand raise then?
What's the
Do
hand
you want
raise?
to do a hand raise then? I mean, so to
See
give
if
her
she's
more
willing
time
to
to
be a
see how many people
spokesperson.
she's representing?
Because I'm representing 48 property owners.
I'm a 49. I didn't get my 59.
Okay.
So, as a matter, simply because there's obviously lack of clarity, for the record, our policies, not only this commission, but frankly, everyone I've served on in the city, has a 3-minute per person.
I understand that.
Seeing as there was misclarification, and this will not apply to, and I love this because I always say you can't decide what is a precedent and what isn't. But privilege of the chair, I will give you an additional 2 minutes.
Okay.
We will not allow others to yield their time to you. They can come up and speak on their behalf. And I did see my counterpart for the school board, so if you want to go with Parley Pro in Oxford, Talawanda, that is very much the cutoff. So we will extend 2 minutes to you simply due to the lack of clarification, but moving forward in perpetuity. It will be 3 minutes unless otherwise previously or pre-allocated.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. On October 17th, there was a city council meeting that voted on the resolution to send out RFPs for the rezoning, to get developers and also to rezone this property. So at this meeting, David Prethridge, am I pronouncing that right?
Close enough.
Close, okay. He did vote for that resolution, saying that to send this to zoning. He also stated that all the properties to the west are R3, so this is not. And then he didn't say there is support for this kind of zoning on the goals and the neighborhood context. One can get that going. He also stated that he said, let's get this rezoned on that date. So Jason Bracken actually voted against the resolution, but it wasn't because he didn't want the rezoning. Because it was kind of conflicting, that vote. He voted against the amendment of that resolution, and that was for the Y, so that they could just cross, they would not even look at RFPs and just go with the Y's proposition of putting in their property on there, which they're, if you look at the RFPs, they're one of the bidders, and their proposal is to have 38-unit apartment building on that property. So just on those grounds, they've already predetermined the matter, in my opinion. So I just ask that, like Matt Arbuckle felt that he had a conflict of interest, I ask that they would not vote on this matter. Thank you.
And also clarification that I apologize, I routinely say this, and a reminder to my colleagues on the commission, this is public comment, not public conversation. So I will remind my colleagues up here, you will not respond. All right. And just a reminder, state your name and your address, please.
I have a handout. Please do.
My name's Harrison Titus. I am also at 101 Charleston Drive. This is in opposition to the zoning map. We claim that the city has rushed into the request for proposal and zoning without adequate community input or procedural practices, allowing for development that would not lead to a sensitive and appropriate fit for the neighborhood. The procedural practices on the city's decision and bidding process. To our knowledge, the city did not conduct any preliminary reviews of successful government-subsidized rental property housing in the state or region as a potential baseline for architectural and engineering or RFP solicitations. There are overwhelming examples of unsuccessful government-subsidized rental property housing developments. The city has proceeded straight to an RFP and passed over any architectural and engineering studies with community input and comments. The city RFP used sealed bids not subject to public review, which is contrary to federal and state recommendations for major purchase over $75,000, where ARPA funds are either used to acquire property or ARPA funds will be used to land grant company to bidders. Negative impact on the surrounding community. Safety concerns arising among current residents. The two largest demographics are seniors, such as myself, and single female households. Seniors who live on limited budgets have severe impacted by the high inflation rates, increased health care. They've enjoyed peaceful community living and would not have any else while they're going in Oxford. Senior citizens and single-family residents are vulnerable to property crimes and violent crimes. This population deserves a safe living environment and peace of mind in their environment. So please see page 2 of the handout. City law enforcement data shows undisputed correlation between federal subsidized housing and the likelihood of various crimes. This chart, as you can see, the first two top ones are Parkview Arms and Indian Trace. These are subsidized housing. The second two are Habitat for Humanity and Charleston Drive, which are owner-occupied. Habitat's 100%, they can't rent, and Charleston is 80%. An R2 amendment would grant the following scenarios to the city. Federal subsidized rental property, HUD Section 8, similar to those shown in Table 1. Long-term management of the property out of city control. Increased law enforcement, courts, and associated services. Housing vouchers would be available to residents who work outside of Oxford Township. Significant traffic safety offset at the two secondary roads coming in at McGuffey and 732. A history of decreasing home value due by high-density federal subsidized rental properties. Kathy and I have searched throughout all of Ohio for good examples of HUD subsidized housing, and we were only to find very few in all of Ohio that were above 3 stars on reviews on a well-known website. One, for instance, was Lytle Way.
Sir, you are above your 3 minutes.
So I want to say, if you look at the first page of the handout, the way you got here today is the ordinance that the city issued, which was 753-7 dated October 17th, states, whereas the Oxford housing needs listed a critical need for affordable housing.
Sir,
It stated the need for 323 units, and it was critical.
I'm
The
gonna
bottom line is,
Mr. Titus, you are at almost 3.5 minutes. I have to cut you off. I apologize. I'm trying to give people ample warning. Thank you, sir. Hi.
Hi,
Name and address, please.
I'm Elaine Brandner. I'm the president of Jamestown Square Condominium Association. I live at 30 Charleston Drive, have lived there for 20 years.
Thank you.
I don't want to repeat everything that's been said. I simply want to say that I have reviewed the 3 proposals, and I would just ask that as you review those proposals, you take our opinions into account, and that we be able to speak, and that 38, that density of 38 in our neighborhood really does change the character of that. So please, I see a lot of issues with the things that I've read, and I would ask that we be involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Green, could you
Good
state your
evening.
name?
Yes, I'm Jessica Green. I'm the Assistant City Manager, and I wanted just to attend this evening to add a little bit more details about the why behind the purchasing of these properties. When council set the goal before the comprehensive plan was passed, the council had a retreat and set the goal in 2021 of housing for all with a special focus on affordable housing. And so that was a directive to staff to really start working on how can we make this happen. So we began a lot of research, and one of the things we found across the country, across the board, is that increasing density is one way to increase attainability and affordability of housing. And so that goal has continued for several years, and with the availability of American Rescue Plan funds, we really began actively looking at how can we find housing, or places for housing in our community. And to Sam's point, we may have to have some assistance from funding programs. I want to be clear, it does not have to be HUD, does not have to be Section 8, but there may be an opportunity to apply for funding assistance. But in order to be eligible for funding assistance, you have to have a big enough lot, you have to be in a walkable area, close to public transit, and close to amenities such as social services or groceries or pharmacies or things like that. So when the Chestnut Street properties became available, they were the right size, they were in the right location, and they are competitive for possible, I want to be clear on that, future applications. And so when we purchased these properties using American Rescue Plan's funds, the intent all along was to try to build more housing in our community, and any development, despite kind of what we do, we always have the intention of doing a higher density development was the intention when purchasing these properties. But what that higher density looked like and who the partner is still unknown. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, Ann. What's your name and where do you live?
Ann Fuhr. I live on Dana Drive in Southern Knowles. I want to position myself and respond to the petitioners while saying that I support this proposal for rezoning. I'm a homeowner residing on the southwest corner of Southern Knowles, backed up to the large field that's north of the middle school. Phase 5 of the Oates Trail will run along the south boundary of our property. That phase connects the middle and high schools, and much of Phase 5 is not visible by anyone other than we property owners and those who will use the trail. I believe we have legitimate concerns about security, even though there is a vegetative buffer, and the city has purchased a side-by-side to increase monitoring of the trail. We have expressed our concerns to City Council and staff, and they've responded in seemingly understanding ways. My spouse may still install a surveillance camera on a shed that is on our property outside of the fenced portion of our backyard. We've been assured that problems on the trail so far have been few, and ready access to the trail is an amenity that might, in fact, increase property values. We support the Oates Trail and the benefits it offers. I begin with this introduction because, though our situations are very different, I want to hear more about and respond to expressed concerns about the West Chestnut development, just as the city did with mine. The outcomes you identify may not happen, but if they do, it would be problematic and they would need to be addressed. I'm glad you are giving voice to your concerns so they can be addressed by City Council and staff and developers. I'm an advocate for more affordable housing for lower income members of our community. I approve of the best practice strategies that the city seems to be using with this proposal. Acquire land so that they can control development, rezone the property if necessary, and then hopefully partner with agencies who will consult with the community in making decisions about development and choose local developers who are proposing active on-site management of permanent supportive housing.
1 minute.
I'm a member of the planning team for a relatively new coalition, OSH, Oxford Area Solutions for Housing. We're interested in preventing homelessness and filling resource gaps for people in Oxford who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. We meet on the fourth Monday of each month, though not in December. I invite you to join us so that we can make sure that your concerns are heard, understood, and addressed as the city moves forward with one of its highest priorities, housing for all. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, if you could state your name and address.
Yes,
Appreciate
Jim
it.
Clausen, 6405 Contreras Road. I guess one of the things I want to point out is that I feel that the city should have really investigated if they wanted to do a project like this, they own 47 acres, like half a mile away from this project. It's also closer to the parks. It's closer to the trails. So why wouldn't we have investigated that before purchasing these 3 houses, tearing them down in an established neighborhood? I guess that's, I'm just asking the question is, I think Corey, you said the same thing is, you own 47 acres. Why wasn't our work put into, okay, let's figure out what we can do with that 47 acres. That's a great piece of land. It would definitely meet what you're trying to do. And so I feel like, I don't know if that was ignored or just wasn't even thought of. But again, I'm just, as a developer, I would kind of like to know what the deal was. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Herndon, and I live at 1009 Maryland Drive. I wasn't going to speak, but it does affect me. I am one of the single females that do live in the neighborhood, and I purposely bought there. I lived in New York City for 15 years, and I saw the neighborhoods around me do things like this, and it changed the neighborhood, and it became, I got robbed through my window. I had different things happen after that happened, so I've lived through some of the things when this happened, and I didn't want to go through that again. So I purposely, when buying a house here, I purposely looked in neighborhoods that I felt safe, where I felt comfortable being that single female. I'm a musician, so I play at night. I sometimes come home late, midnight, 2 o'clock. I don't want to worry that 38 units of people that are low income, or what I found interesting, Perry, you said moderate income, which I found interesting because I heard that there was low income out by Talawanda built, and then they raised the prices and people had to move out because it became more moderate. So I found that interesting. You didn't say low income, you said moderate. But either way, a 38 unit, when it's single family dwelling in this neighborhood that's been established by older people that are seniors, that are more frail, that are, if someone comes and breaks in, or I actually caught 2 people robbing, and tried to stop it, and there was no police around to help. So I've lived through some of that, what that is, and I'm scared to death about what that's going to be. And in my time that I was going to yield, I'm going to try to finish Mr. Titus is what he wanted to tell you, that basically we claim that owner-occupied affordability housing complying with R1A provide the following: significantly higher safety rates, may be targeted to only those who work in Oxford Township at the time of possession, land grant. Qualifications meet 30 to 80% AMI limits for monthly payments, exclusively owner-occupied, no rental, housing refurbishment and updates at time of owner transfer, no long-term management company involvement, and owner payment equals equity, a powerful driver to responsibility in the American dream. Opposition to this zoning map amendment, the city plans to create additional federal tax expenditure of $16 million, not including inflation for HUD Section 8 housing vouchers for 38 units, 3 bedrooms over 30 years. And we claim that leaving the R1A zoning will provide 9 owner-occupied housing, fulfilling the high propriety 2,600 and up price range at a monthly rate of 800 with no additional burden to the government.
Nicely done. With time to spare, no less.
I don't think ready to rush that.
Hi.
Good evening, I'm Jenny Baylor, and I live on Prevalent Drive. What I have noticed tonight, which wasn't in my prepared speech, is that this zoning change request would essentially change the properties in question to match or nearly match the Charleston Drive current situation. So the people on Charleston Drive who are protesting this are protesting exactly the same kind of neighborhood they live in. Just wanted to point that out. I understand there are other houses that are also in opposition. I'd like to thank those, however, who organized the petition, exercising their right to speak freely and express their concerns to those who make decisions on their behalf and the behalf of others in Oxford is very important. I'm glad to know what concerns these people about affordable housing in their neighborhood. These concerns should be carefully considered when making plans for how or if affordable housing is developed near homes. Their concerns matter. The concerns of others in Oxford also matter. There are those in our community who do not enjoy the luxury of having a place to call their home. There are those in our community who are right now living in a car or surfing couch to couch in homes of friends or relatives. There are those in our community who, believe it or not, are right now living in makeshift shelters or tents in wooded areas within Oxford. In fact, a count today found 9 people within the city limits of Oxford living in wooded areas, and there are expected to be 6 additional people interviewed tomorrow. I'm in favor of developing affordable housing on Chestnut for many reasons, but mostly because it is unconscionable not to do it. But I am in favor of developing the area with controls and input from citizens. Any development on Chestnut should include numerous opportunities for neighbors to give input well before plans are finalized and with adequate time to implement citizen-driven accommodations for safety and noise and other things that neighbors are concerned about. Any developer considered by the city to develop affordable housing anywhere in Oxford should have a plan for how they will assist any resident who needs help with attaining social services if needed. A developer being considered should include staff on site who can ensure the housing is safe and secure for all, both residents and neighbors. Any developer considered should take into account concerns of neighboring properties and institute measures in the built environment that address concerns such as parking, driveways, and fencing. No one wants more apartments in Oxford that are not well managed, that are in disrepair, and that are dangerous places to live. We have one of those already, at least one. I feel there are ways to develop affordable housing in an existing neighborhood that addresses the legitimate concerns of the neighbors as well as meeting the needs of our lower income residents using an intentional and thoughtful approach that addresses all concerns. I believe that we can and must include all citizens of Oxford in safe and secure affordable housing. Not everyone is opposed to the development on Chestnut. Thank you very much.
Literally on the dot. Thank you.
Craig Hunter, 517 Pamela Drive.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
Not too bad.
So, and listening to you guys talk about Mr. Moore's proposal, a lot of things came to mind for this proposal. You wanted, what is it going to do to the neighborhood? We don't have any idea what it's going to do to the neighborhood because the city has not told you what their plan is. Are we going to put duplexes on there? Are we going to put an apartment building? What are we going to put on there? You're just saying, yeah, just let's rezone it and let them do what they want. You're opening up a can of worms that you don't know what they're going to put there. Now, I believe that they have the best interests of the city in their plans, but what does that do to our neighborhood? What does that do to the family structure that's around that neighborhood? I want you to think about that. And if you lived in those neighborhoods, what it would do to your family and your makeup. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hi, Diane.
Hi, a voice from the past. Hi, my name is Diane Ruther Vierling. I live in Oxford Township on Stillwell Beckett Road. While I do not live in the city limits, I do support bringing more affordable and low-income housing to the Oxford area. I'm the former director of the Family Resource Center and more recently worked as the clinical director of the YWCA Permanent Supportive Housing Program in Hamilton. I would like to address some concerns that I have heard in community conversations and read on Facebook that we might be creating another Parkview Arms if we build more low-income or affordable housing in Oxford. I would like to share what I see as the key differences between subsidized housing, such as Parkview Arms, and permanent supportive housing, such as the YWCA model, or any kind of permanent supportive housing. Subsidized housing means people who are low income can rent an apartment at Parkview Arms and pay only 30% of their income in rent. Parkview Arms is staffed with a part-time manager and a maintenance person, and that's it. While Parkview Arms provides rental subsidies and a part-time manager, permanent supportive housing programs, such as the proposed YWCA program, are rich in services. They offer social workers on site to help the residents manage any issues that might impact their ability to maintain their housing. The proposed YWCA Permanent Supportive Housing Program would be staffed with a full-time social worker plus 2 full-time case managers. This staff would help residents find employment, childcare, transportation. They will help manage resident conflict, mental illness, or any other problems the residents might have. They will make referrals for external services and may also offer services on site. They will help residents connect to anything they need. The building itself will be a locked facility with a 24-hour front desk staff. This staff will be trained to work with the residents and assist with any concerns that might arise evenings and weekends.
1 minute.
They will monitor residents and visitors, and the building will also have security cameras to monitor. Permanent supportive housing, such as the YWCA model, is the best practice model which has been shown to reduce homelessness and keep individuals and families housed. I hope that this Planning Commission and the City of Oxford will move forward on adding more affordable and/or permanent supportive housing for Oxford residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lei Song, and I'm the owner of 40 Charleston Drive. And actually, I came here just to learn more of the information, but I became really concerned after the Mr. Perry's presentation, because there seems to be intentionally vague on the purpose of this land use. That is concerning to me as a homeowner, also as a single woman living next the street, because I lived in Toledo, Ohio for several years, and I was yelled at in the street. I was almost assaulted by multiple people. I was stalked by a car when I was from work to home. So it was scary. And just as the lady presented information about Parkville apartments, that even makes me feel more scared, because first of all, I'm not against the poor people, and I totally embrace the idea of affordable and accessible living for everybody. But another thing is realistic. You have to see the crime rate and the safety rates with all these kind of affordable housing issues. So as a single woman, I'm really concerned if someone is on drugs, acting wildly while I'm walking my dog. You know, I don't feel safe anymore if that's the situation in the future. But here today, I feel the city was intentionally hiding something from us, which is extremely concerning to me, because what is your motivation after the rezoning? I don't care about the technical side of you are going to rezone it to R2A, or what is the error, or the city say there was an error. We don't know. I don't care about the details, but I really want to know what is the motive, what is the prospect of community input in this project before everything goes forward. So, of course, I sign on the opposition of this rezoning plan, and that's kind of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have dueling speakers. All right.
Hello, my name is Daniel Cox. I'm a proud resident of 121 Charleston Drive. I think the only standard that, if I get this correct, that you have before you is whether or not any of the witnesses have helped you reach a threshold for one of the 4 decision standards to make a recommendation. Am I correct in that? All right. The last petitioner that had business before this board showed up with a schematic, was able to explain how that land could be used, and there was, the Planning Commission at that took a vote to not make a zoning change based on a presentation or an application that actually had a plan that we could see. A representative from the city has indicated that a legitimate need has been demonstrated, but we didn't demonstrate the need. So we don't have evidence of that. We just have the testimony of a city employee that indicates that that one decision standard was met. So that's what I have. Everything that we've seen so far has been minimal, to include the notice that we've received. I appreciate the fact that we received a courtesy notice with a map on it, but it's less of a courtesy than a minimal compliance with Chapter 7 of the Ohio Revised Code that describes what kind of notice is expected to be provided the neighbors that would be affected by the zoning change. So I would expect more than minimal efforts from both the city and from this council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, just a reminder, if you could state your name and address, that would be helpful.
I'm Lucy Herndon. It's 730 Melissa Drive. And I have a creek called Bull Run Creek that runs behind my house. I've lived there around 30 years. And I have seen so much erosion. And we've lost a lot of land in the back due to the erosion. And further down the street, I know some friends that the erosion is so bad, I think the hill starts falling right where their deck is. So a lot of people at the other end of Melissa Drive have been having trouble with this Bull Run Creek, which is near to where this development is going to be. And so I really feel like the city owns most of this creek, I know, and nothing has ever been done about it. And so if you have the additions of this high-density housing unit, it will decrease the amount of permeable surface area, and I'm sure that the water runoff will make the erosion even worse for this creek that's behind there. And another thing is noise. Cars, dumpsters, and 30 to perhaps 100 people moving into a high-density complex situated on a little over 3 acres will destroy the quiet atmosphere that our neighborhood enjoys.
Thank you, ma'am. She was under a minute and a half. All right, any other members of the public? All right.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'm Lori Libby. I reside at 914 Maryland Drive. My name shows up as a signatory to the petition and is used in calculating some of the statistics presented, and I did not sign that. My husband signed that. So just want to make you aware of that. I understand it's early in the process. I don't feel like I know enough to have an opinion, so I don't want to be identified as part of the opposition. Good night.
Thank you.
Was that?
I have no idea where to go after that one, but, sir, your name?
Yes, Mike Henn. I'm at 150 Charleston Drive. I know I did not get a notice, and I'm not quite sure how that works. Part of my HOA would have got a notice because it would get part of that property, so I'm not quite sure how that technically works. I am going to be against this for one reason, and if it goes to true high-density, affordable or low housing, my background's been working on alarm systems and other stuff, which has got me into these buildings anywhere from northern Kentucky up through Springfield. And sorry, but the structures just don't work. Once it starts to fall apart, it just adds to itself till you got real serious problems. The only ones that appear to work and seem to be viable years later are ones that are restricted to seniors and handicapped people. I mean, that's just my personal observation of this type of building if it goes in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mead?
How you doing, Corey?
Doing well, sir.
Pat Mead, I own a property, 131 Charleston Drive. I do not live there, so I speak from perspective of owning a property but not living in there. My daughter lives in the property. I have been here long enough to remember when the person who lived at 607 West Chestnut, I think that's the one closest to Charleston, in the Oxford Press in the old day was throwing a fit because there was a development being put right next to their single family house. And that development was all the condos on Charleston Drive. So maybe that person is getting sweet revenge right now. But I applaud the city for being willing to look at the housing needs of low-income and moderate-income people. I think that is a goal that is just praiseworthy of the city, and I appreciate that. And I'm in favor of this rezoning because I think the rezoning just sets up for what are the next steps. I think I'm very concerned, however, as a property owner whose daughter lives there, about where the next steps take us as far as exactly what is put there, how dense it is, because, you know, the density in a lower income neighborhood is a very important aspect to the issues it might create. And I think we need to be concerned about that. And so I appreciate all the residents who actually live there speaking up and making sure that as the process goes forward, we hold you accountable to their concerns, to the concerns of the people who live there, concerns of the people who own that property. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. I think I made 3 minutes easily.
I was hoping you went over so I could cut you off.
He had said it, yes.
You had a whole minute to go.
I've got other people.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, he chairs the school board, and 3:01, you're done. All right, any other comments from the public?
I move to close public hearing.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, we are adjourned from the hearing of public. I will reiterate, and I do genuinely appreciate everyone's comments. If you don't think you can decipher I can't even read my own handwriting. I just want to reiterate that this is merely consideration of zoning change. As with the first case, we've been given a window into intent, but in the greater scheme of things, that is irrelevant and something that we should not consider. So I do appreciate the comments, but and I say this tongue in cheek. I have a lot of friends who ask questions about, like, why is that pizza place going there, or why do we have so many of this? The Planning Commission merely sets the tone and tenor and the map. If it says general business, as long as it complies, general business can go there. So I think there's a misconception sometimes that we specifically pick, like, oh, yay, we're getting 3 more restaurants. We don't do that. I mean, general business could be Verizon or Taco Bell. So when we talk about that, we are not considering the use outside of permissible uses or what could hypothetically be a conditional use in the future. So I just want to clarify that the decision or a conversation should have nothing to do with that privileged window into intent. So with that super exciting preface, who wants to kick off the conversation? You got to do the last one. I'll let.
May I comment quickly?
Can I say no?
You can, but I'd still like to be heard. There was the issue raised of 2 council members being on this body, and I do think that that's appropriate to address. First, the Charter of Oxford indicates that 2 counselors will serve on the body. The other, so by definition, a counselor's participation cannot be a conflict of interest because that's what the charter says. Secondly, conflicts of interest can exist when there is a potential for some type of perceived or actual financial impact. So a property owner who lived close to this development could be grounds for recusal, as we saw with Mr. Arbuckle. The mere fact that in a situation like this, someone may have stated they have an opinion is not in and of itself grounds for recusal at all. In fact, I would add that this process is a legislative process. and as a legislative process, people are allowed, and frankly, I think you would want them to express their opinions so you know where they stand, because then the discussion can be more transparent in that context. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
And to your delight, to show I have been paying attention all these years, mere membership is not a conflict.
Correct.
Vice Chair Rosenberg.
What I mostly want to say is, I've seen this perception about this particular case online and here in this chamber that the city has been hiding something or is not being transparent. I just want to say, as a member of our Housing Advisory Commission, which I'm also a member with Councilor Bracken, that is a public hearing, or not hearing, that's a public meeting. I welcome anyone to attend that meeting. I know the schedule's kind of getting worked out right now, but it's generally once a month. And we talked about all of this. We talked about what the process would be for what was necessary to build affordable housing in this area. We talked about why this particular spot is such a good spot. And Ms. Green already came up and gave her public comments about part of that transparency that we have. And I say we because I am on housing because of my deep, deep desire for this town to have not just affordable housing for low income, but for moderate income, which I'm not exactly sure why that was a comment. All sorts of housing is required in this town at all price points. And R2A is surrounded here by basically R2A and R3, except for across the street and on Maryland. So it's not like, I agree with Mr. Mead's comments that, I used to walk by this area with my kid in the stroller. This was not Charleston Avenue. This was nothing. So I just want to say it's been transparent. That information is out there. I feel so bad. I've seen online that people feel like this is hard information to get, or that it's not been transparent. And I know the city's hearing that, right? And I just want you to know, this is about zoning this, I know, but this is about zoning this to be, yes, more dense housing, but this isn't even high density we're talking about. So, it's just really struck me, this idea that there isn't this transparency and that somebody's trying to hide something. And I promise you that information is there. And I know the city wants to help you guys know that information. So that's all I would like to say.
Thank you.
Well, I would just address Ms. Titus's point, which is also, if you've been watching me on the council or on the planning commission, I do have opinions. And they are that our goals up here in the comprehensive plan and what our zoning map do have not been in very good step with each other for a very long time. Ours is a community that over a number of comprehensive plans has talked about affordable housing. It's talked about walkability. It's talked about a variety of things that are really, I think they're really laudable goals. And our most recent comprehensive plan, which is the greatest barometer you can have, we try really, really hard to let everyone have an opportunity to say, what's your vision for Oxford for the future? And we listen to that, and the signal that comes out is super strong that people are really concerned about housing, that we're willing to, that we want to look at some things to make a wider range of housing available for all people. So that was the goal that I had as a counselor. The rest of us had it as on council. We did the comprehensive plan, and the public will is the community wants that. So, and then it becomes a question of the zoning map. Well, look at the zoning map. Much of our community is zoned single-family detached dwellings, you know? And I teach urban planning, but across the country, states are preempting communities from being able to do that because it's not an inclusive form of zoning. It doesn't enable people of all incomes to live there. And so, you know, I'm pretty clear about the fact that we need to be bold in relooking at our zoning code to meet the goals that the people say they want us to do. There's a reason why it's out of step, because change is hard. And we have dueling things. One, we say we want these things. We want the walkability, we want the sustainability, we want the affordability, but then we have long-standing traditions of single-family detached, low-density zoning. So we're a little bit out of step, but I would say in this particular location, those are the conditions that already exist there. I was anticipating an R3 because it's R3 to the parcel immediately to the west. And it's my consistent opinion that if you're going to develop, you might as well get the productive density out of it. I think the logic for the R2A is good. I think the idea of matching the template of what's already there, which is obviously a form of development that people really value, that density, you like that character. And I will say that, you know, the idea of the city being the applicant, I know there's an RFP. I purposely don't know who the applicants are. I mean, I don't know the RFP process. I haven't looked into this because I'm viewing this at the sheer abstract level of looking at our comprehensive plan and looking at our map. And I believe that our comprehensive plan, maybe the map in the comprehensive plan doesn't justify it exactly, but I think there are plenty of other justifications. And this location is a good one. As to Mr. Clausen's point, you know, I'll stand by it. You know, we have not gotten into the process of thinking about what the zoning of that 47-acre parcel is, but don't expect me to change my tune there. You know, I mean, I think we need to be looking at all opportunity. I'd rather have development within the community than way on the the outskirts of town. I'd rather. So. Yeah, I appreciate all of the concern. I think I'm trying to be blind to who the applicant is, but we also do pay attention to who the applicant is sometimes, and in that case, it's the city. So this is not your last recourse over what the development is. This is the beginning of a process that would involve way more public input than there would be in probably a typical circumstance. And I really applaud staff. I applaud neighbors for sharing their thoughts and communicate with staff and for that dialogue. But to me, I have to step back from the abstract and point of view to would this rezoning make our map fulfill the goals of the comprehensive plan? I believe it does. Do we need more land in R2A? I believe we do, and it's my legislative opinion. So.
I agree with all that. I think this matches the comprehensive plan goals. It matches council's top goal, and that gives the qualifications for the decision standards. This is something we need, it's something we want. We've demonstrated that both council and publicly through the comprehensive plan process. It makes sense in this area. Again, there will be opposition to change inherently, but there's an R3 right next to it, and that had the same kind of complaints, and now the people that have the luxury of living there don't want to expand that opportunity to others. Others who are in more need by a good amount than those protesting. And I understand the concerns, and again, this is not a final process, right? This is the first of many, many, many steps. I'm on planning, so I experience this, and then I'm on council, and I experience this. Multiple steps. Your input will be considered, but I think a lot of the objections wholesale, just to the zoning, seems way too much.
So I would say that, like my colleagues who just spoke, that this project, the zoning change is consistent with the vision of the comprehensive plan. But I would also like to say that besides thank you to all of you who have expressed your opinion, I feel actually a little sad about the negative assumptions that so many of you have made about what this is and where this process is going. So, as I understand it, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we do not know anything except the potential for density on this site. We do not have a site plan. We do not have a utility plan. These are all things that will happen, and there will be ample opportunity for input from others. But I just, would hope that there would be some trust in the process and not a jump to conclusion that the people that live in this high-density environment are necessarily going to be dangerous or difficult, that no one has made decisions that make that a possibility at this point. So I think that it's a very, very good site for multifamily unit. There's street access, there's good access to transportation, and services, and I think I would support the zoning change.
So I have a myriad of thoughts, and for those of you who are wondering, Mr. Bracken has up our zoning map. I'm just piggybacking off him because I don't feel like asking staff to go digging online for me. There are pros and cons to this. This is, for anyone who loves the word paradox, here you go. So a couple observations. When I look at our zoning map, what it is zoned and what it really is, there's a lot of disconnect. What's R3 in reality is kind of R2. What's R2A, except for a couple of houses on Dana and a few other things, is actually R1, but it's zoned R2. So what our reality and our use are different than what people are seeing and experiencing. So I think that's also some confusion, and not that there's right or wrong, but I can see Dr. Prithridge's point of how things are permissible, but I also think of one of my favorite things, outside of Mr. Arbuckle, I think geographically I live the closest to this of the folks up here. I didn't even know there were houses there till a couple years ago, and I've lived here over a decade. So I understand the tranquility comments and points of view that folks are bringing up. When I look at this strictly from a zoning and a usage standpoint, I've always looked at the need for a zone does not mean it has to be here. So obviously, Uptown's a little tricky because that's the only place that zone's permissible. But that's where some of the comments earlier were, we have zones, but they're not in the right place, and we'd like to get to a point where there's mixed use or multi-use or more flexibility with guidance. We're not there. We do need affordable housing, full disclosure. I used to chair the board of the Family Resource Center for years, had the privilege of working with Diane. I worked with Easter Seals with individuals with barriers to education, training, and employment. So I know the population very well. I was on the housing, not advisory, the Homeless Coalition. So we have a need, but where I struggle is, and if my kids would never be watching this, so I don't have to worry, but what we do or what we need doesn't mean it has to be done this way or here. So you can have a need, but to my comment before the meeting, the devil can be in the details. So that's where I'm struggling, because we do have a need for this density of housing. But I think that's where how the planning process and how our zoning works, there's some discombobulation. So I want to concur. There's a lot of opportunity for input. It is hard to find information in our town because our main newspaper is Oxford Talk. And yeah. So if Bob Ratterman wants to revive the paper, that'd be great. So I do understand that, and I think there should be a voice. And this is where I'm on the fence, because a couple months ago, we talked about Mary Day Park, and some of the prevailing themes and concepts were continuity of the neighborhood. Now, that was a park, and we were gonna change the use of green space to something different. So that's slightly different scenario, but at the same time, these are three very sparsely populated, or, there's 4 buildings, 5 buildings on 3 parcels. Mr. Bracken, there's a lot of trees. And also, at this point, they're 3 separate lots, so the density is, if the density and lot combination or lot consolidation could impact things here, so I'm kind of on the fence. I see both sides. In my 6-7 years, I should really look at when I started planning commission. I think this is the second or possibly highest participation rate of the public I've seen. And these are people who live there and are impacted. And that's the same stuff we took into consideration with Mary Day Park. So I probably seem like I talked in a circle, which I'm awesome at. So that's about all I can throw in the fire. Are there any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I just feel that there's a lot of negative assumptions about this process and what we're going to do. And that's what I think we should try to separate from our consideration. We are for taking this property and allowing the possibility of increased density. We don't have a design. We haven't targeted, as I understand it, whether it's affordable, whether it's low income, whatever. Are we able to say that higher density on this site is acceptable or not? And I think that's all we can do tonight.
Because that it really is, the general welfare is the justification here. And this can be a tension between what a localized community wants and what's the benefit to the general welfare. And there can be tensions in that, for sure. We heard the tensions over the trail, It's hard sometimes. But the justification is really in the general welfare and it's embodied here.
No matter what we do, I think it's very clear that people want to be involved.
Yeah, maybe.
And so we have to have a very, very good way of communicating to the neighbors about what's going on. I don't know if it means setting up a site or something. I think otherwise we won't have a successful project. But I think people want to know what's going on. I think there's a lot of misinformation. And I think as we move forward, if we move forward in terms of developing this, that'll be really important.
Well, the other thing too is and again, there's a lot of paperwork and opinions in this. The city doesn't even own all the parcels at this point, at least, lock, stock, and barrel. So the decision we make has to be if we change the zoning and Schlepp Incorporated student housing comes along, that's a possibility. So I know people are getting stuck on the use, and like I said, it's kind of one of those double-edged swords. We're aware of it, but it's irrelevant. We have to look at it for, I'm gonna throw perpetuity in there one more time. The minute this is changed, somebody could come to that last homeowner, offer them triple the asking price, and, good luck city. So that's what we have to take into consideration, is when we zone it, we're zoning it for a concept and use, not Bob doing X. That would be a planned unit development. All right. Any other comments? One of you wants to make a motion and one of you wants to second it. That'd be a hoot.
Move approval of PC 2023-16.
Second.
Dr. Prithridge with the motion, Mr. Bracken with the second. We will have a roll call vote. And point of clarification, a yes vote means that we're sending a recommendation to City Council from Planning Commission to approve it as presented by staff. Okay?
Ms. Webster?
Yes.
Mr. Rogenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mr. Watt?
No.
Well, this was just a recommendation to city council, and
Folks,
then,
real quick,
and,
we're in a public hearing.
yeah,
So I appreciate that. Happy
Yeah.
to talk to anyone after the meeting.
thanks.
So, moving on, item 7, other business, proposed solar solar facility project. There's a letter of intent from the city of Oxford and Clean Capital, I believe it was Energy. Mr. Perry or Mr. Moore, I'm not sure which of you gentlemen can speak to this. It's
This
more
was
of
a, it was a
informational
required,
item.
yeah, it was a required of Ohio Revised Code to have it in the packet. So city manager actually waived the requirement for a deeper review of this, but this is because of the utility function of this, this property for the solar facility. So there's not, this is an awareness on a public agenda.
I was quite amused with the laundry list of entities that have to be notified per ORC. That was actually slightly funny. But, all right. I don't see any other business, so unless there's something we forgot to add to the agenda at the beginning, I will gladly accept the motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Vice Chair with the motion, Dr. Berthrich with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, we are adjourned.